Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar for October 2024 about expanded use of funds. I am one of your Section 31A consultants, Stephanie Holmes-Webster. We also have Mrs. Suzanne Grant-Bush and also Mrs. Dawn Carmody with us today. So it's 11 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. So Suzanne, you can go ahead and advance. So for those of you who are new to Section 31A, Section 31A is a categorical grant that is given in state school aid since 2015 and 16, and it has advanced markedly since then. It is annually reviewed and renewed. Each year, we're hoping with not lots of changes. Funding is intended to support at-risk eligible students within the LEA. Within the legislation, it defines the intent and purpose, the assurances, meaning that if you accept the funding, then you are assuring us that you are going to implement certain aspects in order to meet the criteria for still being eligible to receive at Section 31A. There are certain allowable uses attached with the use of Section 31A, and there's also eligibility criteria, which we'll go through very quickly. There are a lot of, there's some reporting and monitoring requirements, one of which is the Section 31A Annual Program and Fiscal Report, which is due on July 15th. So just as a reminder and to reiterate, all of this information is contained on our website. It's updated at least every 6 months or anytime that we feel something has changed. So you do have access to that at the Section 31A at-risk page. Suzanne, you can go. So here's some of the eligibility criteria for the students who are eligible at risk. The ones that you see highlighted in bold are the automatic certs that you will receive from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. So any student that is qualified economically disadvantaged by either Michigan Department of Health and Human Services because they are receiving some kind of supports or services through their parent or caregivers. If that student is an English learner, and if that student is an immigrant who has immigrated within the last 3 years, and then immediately preceding 3 years, you get an automatic cert for those people. Now, for those students who also qualify, which have to be qualified through your documentation in your whatever kind of information that you're using, it could be electronic, it could do PowerSchool, Illuminate, or you can use the identification worksheet that we also update annually every year and place on our website. But you must have documentation of all of the following. If a student is chronically absent, a victim of child abuse and neglect, a pregnant teenager or a teenage parent, has a family history of school failure, incarceration, or substance abuse, did not complete high school in 4 years, did not achieve proficiency on state summative assessments, which you can easily prove with your documentation of your state summatives, or the student is at risk for not meeting your local objectives on your ELA or math local assessments. Next. So for intent and purpose, all program planning, anything that we're spending our supplemental dollars on, you want to make sure that you are going back to the intent and purpose. So intent and purpose of Section 31A is to ensure that students are reading by the end of 3rd grade, that they are math proficient by the end of 8th grade, that they are career and college ready, and they are regularly attending school. So reducing that chronic absenteeism rate if your LEA has demonstrated that your chronic absenteeism is a little bit on the increase. So that's what the intent and purpose. So the planning should go back to all of those intent and purposes. Next. And so what are the assurances? So remember that Section 31A, you receive it automatically. Your first payment is usually around October 20th. From what we understand, those allocations for fiscal year 25 have already been updated. So you would need to check your SAMs to see your state aid web page to see what your allocation is for this year, your estimated allocation. Please remember that that can change also with proration. But any of the assurances that are attached with the uses of funding are that you must comply with the Read by Grade 3 law. So you're implementing items that go back to Read by Grade 3 law and early literacy and numeracy, that you are using MTSS with fidelity, K through 12. That's been in the legislation for a very long time. We're going into our 10th year, so we should be a lot further along in our implementation of MTSS. Supplement school breakfast. And so remember, that's a conversation that should be happening at the beginning of the year, not at the end. So your supplement of school breakfast from anywhere from a penny to $10. Now, for those of you who are CEP, that means that you do have to have discussions about what it is that you think you could spend the funding on for your students. And if you need ideas, please call the Office of Health and Nutrition Services for those ideas. And that you're going to complete the annual fiscal program report by July the 15th. And we give lots of TA around that also. Next. So here's some of the allocation trends from the beginning, although we don't have 15 and 16 listed. But if you look here from fiscal year 2017, we were right at $378 million. All the way to fiscal year 25, you see that Section 31A has even outgrown Title I federal funding sources. So you have $1 billion in Section 31A funding that was allocated this year. Next. Is this me? Okay. And so one of the newest things that was added last year to subsection 4 was the opportunity index band scores. The purpose of adding those opportunity index score bands was to ensure that those districts that had a higher level of poverty index rate was going to be compensated for all the various things that we know need to happen within the LEA when we have students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. They may have certain disadvantages. So you have 6 opportunity index band scores, all the way from a multiplier of 35% at band 1 up to 47%, meaning that you're going to get more than the 11.5% allowance. So you will be getting up to 47% if you are in band 6. So if you look at your ED minimums and your maximum, that is where your district will fall. In addition to that, you should have received the email or the information that told you what opportunity band index you were in. And also we have additionally listed all of those districts that qualify on the webpage. We already put that in the chat once and Dawn listed it again. So you would know what opportunity index band score you fall into. Next. So here is the opportunity index allocation formula sample. So these are just taken from various districts. So if you look at an example for District A, if you fell into band 1, meaning that your ED count fell between 35%, well, that's the multiplier. Go back one.
Under 20%, Stephanie, under 20%. So 0 to
under
20.
20%. So if you're under 20%, this District A, their multiplier ranged from 35%, went up to 35.37% from the normal 11.55%. So please understand, you're not going to lose any funding because of opportunity index. If anything, you're going to gain a little. So you see this district had 11.55%. They went up to 35.37%. Their student ED count was 222 students, and their poverty concentration rate was an 8. So their prorated pupil rate was now $1,109, an additional $1,109.72, which gave them a $246,358. So that's the prorated factored allocation amount based on their band score.
Can I just add, Stephanie, one thing? So the intent of legislation is that districts would get 35% of the foundation allowance if they're in opportunity index band 1, but it would take almost $3 billion for Section 31A to be fully funded. So because we're funded this year at 35% of what would be required for the total allocation, districts will actually end up getting about 35% of that multiplier. So it will be significantly more for some districts than the 11.5%, but we're not fully funded yet. But we're heading in a good direction. So districts for the most part, will see a higher percentage than the traditional 11.5, all the way up to probably about 15.5% this year.
So that 15.5%, you'll see districts in band 6. You have two different examples, K and L. So they're about at the highest that they can get in terms of the prorated effective weight, with both of them getting an additional $1,474.68 per student. Next.
All right, this is where I'll take over, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie, for giving us this updates and reminders about the intent and purpose, and also the reminders about our year 2 opportunity index score. So one of the big questions we're getting from districts this time of year and even throughout the whole summer is, where can I find my section 31A allocation? And where can I find my OI band? So the OI bands actually do not get emailed to you. They're on our Office of Financial Management state aid website that you can find in October. So one of the key reminders that I do want to share is that, and one of the things we always have to share as a 31A team, is a reminder that Section 31A is a state aid grant, which means it follows the state fiscal year. Michigan state fiscal year is October 1 through September 30th. So unlike some of your other grants, your federal grants, your Gen Fund, things like that, that you might have an estimate allocation, Section 31A does not have an estimate allocation until the beginning of the state fiscal year in October. So right now that we're finally in October, we can send you to a spot where you can see your estimated allocation. Our MDE OES program allocation website has not yet been updated. It will be updated around the time that the payments go out on October 20th. So October 20th is when the program allocations website will come out on our Office of Educational Support's allocation website, the state and federal allocation website. So just a reminder to bookmark that so you can look for it on October 20th. Currently, though, the MDE Office of Financial Management state aid payment information website does have the 31A estimated payments or estimated allocations out there for you to view today. So you can see that, and we'll put the link in the chat right now of that website. And it is the last bullet on that website called the 24-25 at-risk estimate. So that is a spreadsheet you can go to. Your key columns on that state aid payment spreadsheet that'll download when you hit that last link. And actually today on the slide, it looks like it was the second to last link. Today on the website, on the live website, it is the last link. They must have removed the other bullet this week. But the key columns that you're going to want to look at on that spreadsheet is your district code and district name in column B and C, your opportunity index score that Stephanie was just talking about in column H. You can use your district's opportunity index score in column H. And when we send you the follow-up slide deck handouts, you will be able to compare it with that slide 2 slides ago to see which band you're in, band 1 through 6. And then column K is your factored amount. It's labeled factored amount, but that's your estimated allocation for the school year. That is the factored amount, like Suzanne was mentioning, based on that prorated percentage that's going to be used in your district's allocation formula. So this is a handy website, web resource, public facing, that you can go find your OI score for your district as well as your current allocation. A key asterisk reminder is on the Office of Financial Management site, their spreadsheet will stay out there all year to show you your October estimate. On our OES program allocation website, it will get updated monthly because it could be prorated with the opening and closures of schools throughout the year. We don't have a final allocation for Section 31A until you get your final payment in August. So let's jump in to the main purpose of this webinar today in talking about the new subsection 14 through 16 of our Section 31A law that it was new and signed the last week of July this year by the governor. So 14 has 2 expanded use for eligible districts. Again, our eligible districts for these expanded use of funds is our districts that have an opportunity index score in band 5 and 6. And so we have 823 districts this year getting Section 31A funding. These provisions, subsection 14 through 16, is for about 40% of our school districts. 325 districts is eligible to use this expanded use of funds out of their allocation. So 14A, again, is for any opportunity index bands 5 and 6 districts with schools that serve K3 and have a academically disadvantaged school rate of 73% or higher. Those schools can use these allocation up to 30% of their allocated funds to help support the reduction of teacher to student pupil ratios in grade K through 3. 14B states that districts in the opportunity bands 5 and 6 can use up to 30% of their funds to support retention and recruitment activities and supports to decrease staff turnover and vacancies. So these are the new 2 expanded use of funds, is what you'll hear the Section 31A team calling it this year for the eligible districts. Subsections 15, 16, and 17 has some requirements for districts that are using this provision 14 and some requirements for MDE for reports to put out. So it really is new language added to the law about how to implement these expanded use of funds defined in subsection 14. So it's the requirements that districts have to follow and the Department of Ed has to follow. So in subsection 15, you're going to see that it says districts who are going to use the funds in this manner have to make sure that the funds being used up to the 30% for each 14A and 14B, so 60% total, aligns to their needs assessment and their MTSS model. The supports being funded with 14 cannot be for administrative costs, just like no Section 31A costs can be administrative costs. It also cannot be used to supplant existing funding, including maintaining salaries and costs. And districts that intend to use the funds in this manner, in this expanded way, these new flexibilities, must report to the MDE no later than November 1st, the intent to use the funds in these provisions. Subsection 16, like you can see on the slide, says any districts that are using funds in this manner and eligible this year will have eligibility to use them in this flexible manner for 2 more years. So that'll be fiscal year, we're in fiscal year 25, so that'll be fiscal year 25, fiscal year 26, and fiscal year 27. And then last but not least, implementing of this new requirement is subsection 17 that says our team, the Michigan Department of Education Section 31A team, will annually share with districts what buildings, what elementary schools, K-3 classrooms and schools are eligible to use subsection 14A to reduce the teacher to student ratio or teacher to pupil ratio for the schools in the upcoming school year. This year, we got that on our website right on August 1st, a week after the law was signed, and the information that it was posted on our website went through that Thursday communications from MDE on August 1st. So that's where we will be posting when the lists are updated. But you're joining our webinar today, so make sure you bookmark that Section 31A website and double check for it there at the end of July next year as well. So piggybacking off that slide, we talked about some of the things that subsection 15 specifically said that this new provision does not allow and does allow and require. But we wanted to throw this slide in this slide deck today to remind us all of 31A grant cannot be used for administrative costs, cannot fund foundational components of any program in general. And so remember, like Stephanie said at the beginning, this is a categorical fund really for providing additional supports and services for instructional and non-instructional supports and services for at-risk eligible students. Teacher of record is generally not allowable, with the exception, of course, this year with this expanded use of funds for 14A with reducing the teacher to pupil ratio. So that intent to use form, this is why everyone's here too, to get the hot off the presses information about how does your district this year notify the MDE team that you're going to use subsection 14 and these expanded use of funds. So we will be going live with this very soon, possibly in the next day and at the latest next week, as the memo shared. The form is going to be located in Nexus. There's just like section 31A annual program and fiscal report is located in Nexus. There's a new section 31A 14 intent to use form located in the Nexus application platform. Who should complete it? Any of the districts that are going to be using funds this year in these expanded use of funds ways will need to complete the forms. And we're going to go over how to complete those in the rest of this webinar. It's due, just like legislation says, no later than Friday, November 1st this year. So a couple of weeks to get that done. And then how will you know it's available? It's when our memo does go out. Our memo went out this week about today's webinar that you're joining, as well as the Nexus application. So some key things as we move into talking about what this Nexus form looks like and how we're going to complete it in the next couple of weeks. A couple of things that we want to bring to your attention. First of all, only this application, this form is only going to be available for the 325 eligible districts, including our LEAs and our public school academies that are in band 5 and 6 for the 24-25 school year. It's going to be due annually by November 1st. Again, we love that you guys are here joining the webinar today or rewatching this on the recording, because we know that this year, with the law not getting signed to the end of July, this is going to be a quick turnaround in future years because we have this ready. I suspect it'll be out earlier, right at the beginning of the school year. There will be follow-up questions. This data that's in the intent to use form will be pulled forward, and we're going to use some of the demographic data that will be able to be used in the APFR, or you may be asked to reflect back on the intent to use form information on the July 15th due APFR. And then what you're going to see is this is a very streamlined form. There's the 3 general pages that are required for almost all of our applications in Nexus: the cover page, the important information, and the assurances and certifications. So again, filling out your main contact, reading the information and hitting save. And then there's 2 forms that are specific for the different provisions within this expanded use of form. So there's one form that's specific to 14A, the K-3 teacher to student ratio reduction, and a specific form for 14B for teacher and support staff retention and recruitment. So on your dashboard, you're going to find the new report, the section 31A 14 intent to use application or form in your My Opportunities. Once you have initiated it, you can, just like other applications, add different levels to complete it. If a level 5 initiates it, you can assign a level 4 to complete it, things of that nature, like the Nexus usually allows you to do. And if you do step away and you close out of it, you can use the application search screen to find the report that has been initiated. It will also be in your My Tasks. And like I said, the very first 3 things you're going to find on our navigation slide menu is the cover page, the assurance and certifications, and the important information. All 3 pages need to be completed in order to submit. So you have to click on the page. In cover page, you're going to update the main contact and the secondary contact, hit save. On our assurances and certifications and our important information, you're going to read the important information on there. That's going to help you complete this in a timely manner and submit it. I'm going to pass this over to Suzanne to go through the section 31A, 14A, and 14B pages.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm Suzanne Grambush, and I am the 3rd member of the Section 31A team. So on with the intent to use form in Nexus. So after you have reviewed and saved the cover page, the important information, and the assurances, you'll move on to the next section, which is related to subsection 14A and reducing the teacher to student ratio. Again, this is only for schools with 72% or more students identified as economically disadvantaged that are in districts that have been assigned to Opportunity Index bands 5 and 6. So the LEA will choose if they'll be utilizing up to 30% of their allocation for K through 3 reduction of the teacher to student ratio. So if you indicate no, then you'll be able to move on to the next section, subsection 14B. If you indicate yes, then you will be asked to include your estimated fiscal year 25 allocation amount. And Dawn went over that briefly. I'm just going to show you again. So you can get that information currently by going to MDE services, then financial management, then the state aid and school finance, and then state aid payment information. And there, as Dawn said, at the bottom is the fiscal year 25 at-risk estimate. And again, some of the important columns that you want to take a look at, column H will show you your opportunity index score. And then column K is your factored amount, which is your estimated allocation for this year. So you can find that there, include that then in question 2 for your estimated allocation amount. And then question 3 asks, what amount of funding do you plan to use for this new expanded use to reduce the teacher to student ratio? So it can be any amount up to 30% of your total allocation. And then you will move on to part B, which includes the assurance statement. So districts acknowledge that they'll use the funds only for schools that are eligible and are included in the list that MDE publishes eligible schools for section 31A, 14A list. And again, that can be found on our website. You also acknowledge that funds may not be used for administrative costs or to supplant existing funding, and also the requirement to submit your completed intent to use form by November 1st. And then on to part C. So for 14A, in part C, districts are asked to provide information about each of the buildings that will be utilizing funding in this way. So for each school that will use funds to reduce the teacher to student ratio, you'll complete one line, the school name, the school code, the grade levels, all the grade levels that will be included in your initiatives, K through 3. And then it asks the districts to determine what the previous year's average teacher to student ratio was for the grade levels that will be using funding to reduce the teacher to student ratio. So you're going to look at all of the classroom ratios and the grade levels that you plan to use the funding for and include last year's ratio. And then there's a column to include how you're going to reduce that ratio. So what is the current year ratio as a result of what you're putting in place? And then districts also need to include the percentage of students who were at or above grade level in reading at the end of last year. And so that would be the average of all the grade levels that will be included in your reduction efforts, what the percentage of students that were on grade level or above grade level in reading in the previous year. And then the final column just asks for a real high level explanation of how you will be using the funds. For example, if you are eliminating the need for a split classroom, or if you're implementing team teaching, or if you're hiring an additional teacher to reduce class sizes. And so again, you'll fill out one line for each school. And then once you've included all of the schools that you plan to utilize this expanded use for, you'll move on to the next part, which
Suzanne,
is actually the next section. Yes.
can we go back to that other slide for just 1 minute? I apologize that our screenshot doesn't have this, but in Nexus, just so you guys know, if you're adding multiple buildings on that line right now where it says school name, school code, that line is a repeatable row. Our screenshot cut it off, but there will be a blue and white plus sign if you need to add more rows after the last text field. So if you need to add, let's say you have 3 buildings that you're going to be using this part of the intent expanded use, you would just add those 3 rows like Suzanne said by adding that blue plus button. If you accidentally add one row too many, there will also be, once you add that row, a red and white trash can that you can delete it. So those icons are not on our screen right now, but just so you know, when you go in, that's how you would add additional rows and how you would take some rows off. Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah, thank you, John. Okay, so then the next section is related to the flexibility under 14B, and that provides the opportunity to use funding to support retention and recruitment efforts to help reduce staff turnover and vacancies of instructional and support staff. And this flexibility is available for districts assigned in Opportunity Index bands 5 and 6. So the first question asks if funding will be used in this way. And if you indicate no, then your form is complete and you want to save and submit. If you indicate yes, then again, you'll be asked your estimated fiscal year 25-31 allocation. And then in question 3, it will ask the amount of section 31A funding that you plan to utilize to support retention and recruitment efforts. And again, that can be up to 30% of your total allocation. And you indicate that then on question 3, and then move on to part B. And part B is the assurances related to subsection 14B. So the first assurance is that funding will be used only by eligible districts that are assigned to Opportunity Index bands 5 and 6. And again, that it won't be used for administrative costs, and that you'll complete the intent to use form by November 1st. And then there are a list of strategies that you might employ for retention and recruitment. And what's listed is preparation. So that could include funding advanced coursework or professional certifications. Also listed is retention, so stipends or performance bonuses, or funding professional learning that supports the intent and purpose of section 31A, but is beyond what's generally allowable. So examples could be membership in professional networks or collaboratives, or being included in fellowship programs. We've also listed mentoring and induction programs, so things that you're doing beyond what's required by law, or recruitment initiatives that could include stipends and bonuses. Then there's also a box for other, and it gives you a narrative box, and you can include strategies that you'll be using that are not listed here. Question 2 asks approximately how many teachers or teacher positions you plan to support with this funding. And question 3 asks approximately how many support staff or support staff positions will be funded. And then question 4 is which grade levels will be impacted. And then once you've completed this section, you want to save and submit, and your intent to use requirement will be completed. And that's it. It's pretty basic form. We do have a form that mirrors that currently on our website, since it's not yet available in Nexus. So if you want to take a look at all of the components that are required, there's a link that we're providing to that intent to use form planning template. It virtually mirrors what you'll find in Nexus. We also are providing a link to our website that includes all of Section 31A law. So more information about the opportunity index bands and the percentages and the specific legislation around the new expanded use, and a link to the eligible school list. So all of those resources are linked here. And our contact information. So we encourage you, if you have specific questions about your context or you want to talk about your planning, we welcome you to reach out to your point of contact or to any one of us to talk about what you would like to do and if it is allowable. So I think now we're going to open it up for questions.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. And here, like Suzanne just put on the screen, is who is your regional point of contact. We do have a position that will be filled, hopefully in the near future. The position closed last week. So we'll hopefully have a new team member to introduce later this fall or winter.